You can take the person out of their past selves, but you cannot take the past self out of them. I'm sure you are wondering what I'm talking about. Well, what I am saying is that you can try and change the person because you see a bright future with them or in them, but if that person is not used to the change, it is impossible to expect them to do as you have expected. I was once in that position where I saw this lovely lady, even though she was not perfect and not doing well in life generally. But I saw a future with her. I saw my potential missing rib, I was even willing to take the risk and build a long-lasting relationship, but I guess I had counted chickens before they hatched. Do you think it's possible to change someone with a bad, or must I say a shaming past? If there is anyone who once came off with a similar problem, how did you deal with it? Let me get on with what I got myself into thinking I was a good Samaritan and a good husband who just wanted to make his wife's life perfect and help her make new memories so she can leave the past where it belongs. But they say once it gets along with your blood, it's hard moving on from it. I am 38, am naturally a down-to-earth and quiet kind of guy, which may be the reason why all my relationships don't last for too long. Most ladies would say a guy like me is too soft. But my advice would be, never take for granted a quiet and reserved guy because once they have had enough, they explode, and when they do that, you won't like the outcome. Quiet guys are more dangerous than loud ones. Anyway, I met this lady at one of the nightclubs in my hometown in Newcastle. I had gone there to clear my head after the presentation I had done to get sponsors for the business I wanted to start in the farming industry. It had been a very stressful day, so I needed 1 or 2 cold beers to quench the thirst and try not to stress about the presentation. So I saw this lady. She looked really stressed and intoxicated. She was so beautiful. Even a child would see what she was going through the most. So I asked the bartender if he knew the lady, and he told me that he didn't. All he knew was that the lady came to the club when they opened, and she had never gone anywhere since then. I wondered what she was going through that would make her go to the club at 12 p.m. till late. I took it upon myself to go to her table. I thought maybe she needed someone to talk to. I mean, everyone needs someone to vent to when they are going through something, right? And it gets much better if you vent to a stranger because you know that a stranger would never share your issues or laugh at your issue. So I wanted to be one of those good listeners who don't go to a lady to take advantage of her mystery. She was gorgeous and everything, yes, but she didn't need someone who would try their luck on her. Then she ended up making wrong decisions because she acted with emotions. So when I got to her table, my mouth got dry. I got suddenly scared to speak to her, but I had assured myself that I was just going to ask if she was okay. Then I would leave her alone. I greeted her. She looked wasted, so I joined her on her table. She gave me a hard time thinking I was rizzing her. I had to assure her that I only wanted to check if she was doing okay. She then spoke a lot of things I didn't even catch because she was too intoxicated. I stayed with her as she was busy talking. Her words were slurring. I couldn't understand most of the things she had said. Later on, it was time for me to go back home since I had only come to the club for a few drinks, but I didn't want to leave her alone. Some people with no conscience would take advantage of her. So I took her to my small car that I had inherited from my late father. The moment she got on a passenger seat, she just dozed off. It concerned me that such a respectful and beautiful woman would go through something bad or heartbreaking to a point that she would rather find solace in booze. I took her to my room. Well, at home, I had a 2-room house outside the big house. So I took her to my room and left her in my bed. I didn't want to be seen as a pervert, so I went to the big house and disturbed my grandmother from her sleep, which confused her because she had never seen me sleeping inside the big house. I had moved out of the house when I turned 16 years. I told her that I wanted food, but I know she didn't believe me because she came with the blanket and went back to bed. The next day, I went to my room to check on the stranger, and I found her looking stressed and shaken. Maybe she thought she had been abducted, but I would never do something like that. I tried explaining to her what had happened the previous night, but she kept panicking, so I made her water with sugar to calm her nerves down. After a while, she calmed down and she told me that she wanted to go back home, meaning I had to take her back to the nightclub so she could get her car. Mind you, that time I had to go to work, but I didn't mind, so I took her. She asked for my name and numbers and told me that she wanted to thank me for the gentle gesture when she gets free. I didn't mind. In my mind, I told myself that maybe she just wanted to say thank you. Only then we would never see each other again. Since that fateful night and morning, I couldn't stop thinking about her. She really looked like someone who was going through the most, and I wanted to be there for her. I wanted her to feel safe and resort to nightclubs whenever she faces difficulties. You know when you think a lot about someone that you end up dreaming about them? Well, that was me. I think I was in love. I fell in love at first sight. Or was I fooling myself? She really looked like someone who had the whole world on her shoulders. A week later, I received a call from the lady. Well, I'm calling her lady because I didn't even get her name the other day. So I received a call from her and asked to take me out as a token of appreciation for what I had done the other night. I would never say no to freebies, so I told her that I would be free during the weekend, then we agreed to meet at some restaurant. The weekend came, I was super nervous. I didn't know why because the lady didn't say it was a date, but still I was nervous. Maybe I was nervous because I would get a chance to look and talk to her sober self. Not the drunk lady from the other night, and the one I dropped at the club in the morning who was going through a hangover. So when I got into the restaurant, she had already ordered our drinks. Not that I minded, but I don't trust already ordered drinks. What if she had spiked my drink? But that was delusional of me, right? Okay, so the date, or must I say the token of appreciation date, went well. She told me that she was going a lot, and that's why she was intoxicated. I had already seen that. I just wanted to know what she was going through. My heart was longing for her, you know. I wanted to be by her side. I couldn't understand what was happening to me because I had never felt like that. Not after what my ex-wife had done to me in our relationship. The lady told me that her name was Elizabeth, but she grew up being called Betty, 37. We started communicating a lot. She was a very free-spirited person, but she liked flashy life. Time passed as we were getting closer to each other every day. I had invited her to meet my grandma because I was sure that she would have loved to meet someone in my life. We were not dating that time, but I had already pictured my future with her. The meeting went well. My grandma kept asking if she had known her from somewhere. Obviously, there are people who look alike or have resemblance to other people, but that doesn't mean it would be them or their relative, right? Only if I had known that my grandma knew something. I respect love. It makes you ignore important signs and warnings. The more we got closer, the more she loosened up and was free to talk about anything. So one day she poured it out to me. I was happy that she had finally decided to open up. As she was explaining what she was going through the night I first saw her, I caught something. And that thing was that she had lost her husband a year ago, so when that happened, she lost herself to a point that she found solace in booze. Time passed and she started sleeping with younger guys because she was feeling lonely, and those young guys made her feel young and alive. I know I should have taken that as a warning and ran for my life, but my heart wanted what it wanted, and it was her. I didn't want to judge her, because what we sometimes go through or have been through do not define who we are and where we are heading. I wanted to give her a chance to experience and feel true love. Do you think I was fooling myself? She also told me that she loved rough sex. That one took me off guard because I didn't know if I would meet her expectations when it came to being intimate, but I was willing to try anything she wanted so that she would be satisfied and not go back to those young boys she once found comfort from. A couple of months passed and we officialized our relationship. Betty was a good, smart, and business-minded woman, so having her in my life was a great blessing. She gave me so many business ideas. I was glad to have her in my corner. I had got the farm deal and everything was looking bright for me. Our love was a bliss. I don't know if it was great because we were on a honeymoon phase, but we were happy. We then decided to get married after we had dated for 6 months. I was the happiest man on earth. My heart was full. During those 6 months, I had rebuilt my grandma's house. Then after our wedding, we joined our accounts to buy a house. Not thinking about the future outcome. It was really foolish of me, right? Our lives were great. 2 months before our marriage, we found out that she was pregnant. I was over the moon, man. I couldn't wait to be a father. Betty made me happy. She respected me as her husband. She was not the person she once told me she was. I knew that she would have made a great mother to our child. I had everything planned out. It was like I had written down my future plans with her, but it was just wishes and dreams. But I guess dreams are meant to stay in dreamland and not make it to the real world. She made me believe that she was the one, my life, the person I would spend my whole life with and share a successful journey with. not knowing that I had counted so many chickens before they hatched. Fear female species. A couple of months later, she gave birth to a very adorable baby boy. The baby looked so much like me you would swear I had denied him. Lol. He was a spitting image of myself, and I fell so much in love. I mean, if you get a boy as a child, you should be happy because that boy will be the one taking charge and responsibilities of your empire. They are the ones who are responsible for growing your legacy. What I noticed about Betty after she had given birth was that she didn't look happy about the baby. I don't know, maybe I was delusional, but I couldn't shake off the feeling that she didn't want or loved our child. She was off, and that made me worried because I once asked her how she felt about being a mother. The only answer I got was her shrugging her shoulders, meaning she didn't know or didn't want to answer. Our 1-year anniversary came. I had planned to cook for her and allow her to rest since she had been taking care of our child and the house, but she did all those house chores before she decided to have an urgent journey that she needed to take. I didn't understand the sudden travels, especially when the sun was about to dawn. I didn't want to ask anything. I mean, since she was a doctor, her job was sometimes, well, not sometimes, but always in demand. Her behavior went on until one day, when I came back from work, she had left the child alone. I didn't understand why she would do that. I mean, she could have called. I started having doubts about her. When I confronted her about the issue, she told me that she thought she was going to come back earlier. Life, what the hell? If she thought she was going to get back early, she would have taken the child with her. What pissed me off more was the fact that she didn't even bother to call me and tell me that she was going somewhere, and there was no one who was going to look after our child. The accident she did really made me doubt her. I knew and saw that she was acting awkward and off around our child, as much as she had given birth to him. But she didn't have that excitement of being a new mother. She didn't give herself that chance to get to know her child. She was taking care of him, yes, but she didn't have that affection and attention to give our child. All she cared about was her urgent meetings that suddenly pop up, either before the sun dawns or in the evening during the time that would be supposed to have been a family time. Things got out of hand, and I had started getting tired of her. One day I came back from work early. The child was with the nanny. After that incident, I decided to look for a nanny because it showed that my child didn't have a mother but a person who just gave birth to her. I confronted her about her behavior and she just busted out, which was really alarming because why would you burst out about something you were not guilty of? Did I really trap myself? Her meetings went on till she didn't even bother, notifying where she was going. Sometimes I would find her already gone. I didn't care anymore, but it was heartbreaking to see my wife acting like that. If I was a Christian, I would have said she was possessed by demons, but I know she wasn't, and everything she was doing, she did it sober-minded. I had to step up and be the mother and a father to our child. Sometimes I would ask my grandmother to babysit my child because his mother had decided to act like a teenager that was going through an adolescent stage. I once went to her workplace to check on her as the good husband that I was. I had thought she was going to change, I had that hope that she would wake up and smell the coffee and realize that she had a family that needed her. When I once got into her workplace, I was told that she had taken leave from work. Her reason to take a leave of absence from work was she was going on a vacation with her family, so she needed some time off. I was so shocked about that reveal because I knew nothing about it. So I then decided that I had to make a plan because surely she was cheating. We didn't even reach our 2 years of marriage. We were still 1 year and few months, but already she was living another life outside our marriage. I wondered where she had gone because the reason for her leave off work didn't make any sense, since to me she kept saying she was going to work, or let me just say she kept disappearing, and I had thought she was going to work. I hoped and prayed that she didn't think she would make me a fool for the longest time. I may have been a fool to her, or she may have seen me as a fool. But little did she know that you cannot fool a fool, and it doesn't know you are fooling them. So I then took it upon myself to tail her wherever she went. It was creepy and weird, I know. But I had to do something, so I would find out what had been up to that had made her lie at work. It was really hard for my son because children feel or sense when there is tension in the house or when they no longer feel loved. As much I had tried to be there for him, but I couldn't be 100% present because I also had work and the farm that I had recently bought. I tailed Betty every day whenever she went out, and one thing I had noticed was that her stop was only one, and it was in some apartments in Washington. I was now acting like a psychopath because I kept on following her whenever I had knocked off early from work. Unfortunately, after a week of following her, she noticed that I was following her and got pretty angry. She threw shades at me, telling me that I didn't trust her, and she wanted out of our marriage because she couldn't be with someone who doesn't trust her. I mean, I didn't even get a chance to say anything, but guilt was eating her up because she had been caught. And I was not willing to let everything go without finding out who she was visiting at those apartments that had made her lie to work and stop doing her wifely duties. My work had not yet started. There was a lot of digging I had to do. I couldn't allow her to make me a fool, not after what my ex-fiancé had done to me. I know back then I was still naive, and she got someone better than me, but it pissed me off that she had to wait till I proposed to her for her to cheat on me. That was the time I had vowed to myself to never ever allow another woman to make a fool out of me just because I knew how to express my love to them. Then they saw someone who they could take for a ride. My whole being craved for panel beating. Betty a little. Maybe she would regain her memory and remember that she had a family that needed her once she woke up on a deathbed. What she did showed that she had no respect for me and our marriage, because I knew very well that she does not have any relatives who live in those Washington apartments. So one day she came home from wherever she was and told me that she was moving out and she wanted a divorce. Such a nerve she had. She really thought she was going to show me love and made me used to it. Then she would just up and leave just because she wanted her freedom. I told her that she would get a divorce over my dead body because she can't be toying with my heart like how she did. And when she felt like she had had enough, she would up and leave. I wanted to destroy her before she even brought the divorce papers, but first I had to find out who she was seeing, because whoever it is that she was dating was the reason why Betty acted like she did, and even thought of divorce. A week passed after she had told me that she wanted a divorce, and I obviously declined. So I bugged her phone to monitor wherever she was going. And doing that process, I found out that she was spending more time in that apartment. So I decided that I would bust her so I can get enough evidence that she was really cheating. I also wanted to find out who she was cheating with that had made forget that she was a mother before anything. I monitored her cell phone until I saw that every day at 5 in the afternoon she goes to that apartment. So that day I had followed where my phone was telling me the location of Betty's cell phone. When I got there, she had just come back from work, so I continued checking my phone, and I found myself in apartment number 9. I knocked, and the door was opened by a young man. If I would estimate, his age would be between 19 and 23. My mind was telling me that maybe my tracking app had taken me to an incorrect apartment number. My conscience kept telling me that she was there, though I couldn't bring it to myself that she would actually be dating or cheating on me with a child. What caught my attention was when my wife came to the door and called the young man my love. I couldn't believe it, you know. My mouth got dry, my heart was beating so fast, I even tried comforting myself by saying maybe it was a misunderstanding, or maybe the child was hers. She had kept him a secret, or she was dating the father of the young man. As if that was not enough, the young man called her by a pet name. Right there, and then it was confirmed that indeed the young man was dating Betty. I have never felt so disgusted and humiliated like that in my life. I knew she was unfaithful to our marriage, but I had thought that if she was unfaithful, she would actually go for a child who looked more than 10 years younger than her. I felt disrespected and hurt because I kept asking myself, what must have I done wrong for her to practice infidelity with a small boy? I couldn't stop thinking about it, and it made my knees weak whenever I would think of it. As if that was not enough, the nerve Betty had when she saw me standing on the doorstep of a boy's apartment. Well, I was not sure if it was the boy's apartment or it was hers, and I didn't care much about it. What I cared about was the fact that she asked me what I was doing at the apartment. She even called the cops on me, saying I was trespassing, and I got dumped on the spot, saying I should expect her lawyer, who would be delivering divorce papers on her behalf. How wicked can she be, huh? A week after I had witnessed my wife's infidelity, I was emotionally overstressed to a point that I had even forgotten and neglected my son. I know it was selfish of me to weep over a grown woman, but it did hurt because I had invested my love, my heart, and my life to the relationship, only to be cheated on with a child. Betty didn't respect me as a man who saved her from her miserable self. I knew she once had flings with young boys after she had lost her husband. but I had thought that she was going through a moment of weakness and loneliness, and she used young boys as part of her grieving process, not knowing that it somehow became a habit to her. I remember when she told me that she loved rough and commanding intimacy, but I thought I had tried my best in that department. Or didn't I? I took my son to my grandmother's house during weekends, because during those days the nanny would not be coming in. I couldn't take care of my son while I was going through an emotional detachment. My comfort was alcohol for that period and burying myself to work to keep myself and mind occupied. I wanted to avenge myself for playing with my feelings like that. I couldn't allow her to just move on, date a young guy and dump me like a piece of use a tea bag. I had vowed to myself that I would make sure she suffers, not because I was a bitter husband who didn't take the breakup well, as most people would say. But let's remember the heart was hurting, so in order for it to heal, I had to avenge it. A mind can forget what had been done to it, but never think the heart will also forget. It will always be hungry for vengeance. A week later, I received a call from Betty's lawyer asking for a meeting with me. So I asked her to come through to my workplace because there was no way I was going to go to her office. I was not ready to sign the divorce papers, not because I didn't want to let go of her or I was scared to lose something. No, I was not scared of anything. And the good thing in all of that was that we were not married in joint custody. So when I was ready to sign the papers, I would not lose anything. The only thing I wanted to do before I signed the divorce papers was to make her life miserable, to the point that she would miss her dead husband and regret the day she decided to find comfort in young boys. After the meeting with Betty's lawyer, I decided to pick myself up and be present to my son. I mean, I couldn't grow up thinking that his parents had abandoned him or hated him. Everything I did was for my son's best interest. I couldn't allow myself to burden my grandmother like that. She was already dealing with her old age, so bringing a child every weekend for her to babysit was too much. I fixed myself and spent most of my weekends at my grandmother's house with my son. I couldn't be happier, having to spend my time with the people I loved. Since it was only my grandmother and I, and an additional member who was my son in the family, was all I could have ever asked for. My grandmother was happy that I was fixing myself and spending more time with my son than with the bottle. One day I went to Betty's workplace to find out why she did what she did and why she chose to go back to the person she had worked hard to behind. I needed answers, though we were not going to get back together, but I needed some sort of closure so that I would be able to move on and live my life for myself and my son, along with my grandmother. I found her in her office, with her Ben 10. The kind of look she gave me when she saw me coming into her office was the look that would make a person that you do not want to see them or you hate them. I greeted them and asked to talk to Betty on the side, but she flatly refused. But her boy was kind enough to leave the room so we could be alone. She told me that she had nothing to say to me. I didn't understand her because if I could refresh my mind, I had never mistreated her or hurt her in any way. The only wrong I did was loving her and giving her my all, so that was the thank you I got after everything we had been through. Her behavior started changing after she gave birth. When I asked her why she did what she did, and why had gone back to the old Elizabeth, the one she had told herself that she didn't want to go back to because she was not her real self when she did that, which I gladly helped her with. We found therapists and taught her to open up whenever she was going through something. So she told me that dating the young boy didn't mean she had gone back to her old self. What she did it for her own happiness. And I and my son were not giving her any happiness. She told me in the face that I was boring her, in bed and as a person in general. She kept spewing a lot of bullshit to a point that I slapped her while she was still spewing how much she played me in my heart. There was one thing that made me lose control, and I found myself choking her when she mentioned that she didn't want our child and called him names. I got super furious. I never want to hear anyone talk or speak nonsense about my son. I would never think twice to attack that person, even if it is the Queen of England herself. A year later, my son was going to be turning 1 year old, which made me happy because he had grown so much, and he never gave me any problems. The space of not having a mother in his life didn't change anything, but it made us bond. Plus, he looked a lot like me. He was my little replica, which made a cherry on top. I had taken a break from dating or seeing women species because I didn't want to involve myself with any female. My only priority was my son. So I had planned to take him and my grandmother out to celebrate my son's first birthday. I decided to take my grandmother and my son on a weekend away to New York. I had never taken my grandmother out of Newcastle, so it was time to show her the world. She was skeptical at first, but she eventually agreed. My son enjoyed his birthday, and my grandmother couldn't stop talking about the trip when we got back to Newcastle. My heart was at ease, and I wanted nothing more than to see my son and my grandmother happy. So the day we got back from New York, which was on a Sunday, when we got back, we found Betty at my grandmother's house. My blood boiled, because I didn't know what she was doing at my grandmother's house. The lady had to leave her for days. I wanted to murder or paralyze her on the spot because she was making me angry. She said that she came to wish our son a happy birthday, which really surprised me because I had thought she didn't care and didn't want our son. I wondered why she came back after a year of abandoning our son, but I couldn't ask her that. My grandmother, with her welcoming heart, welcomed her in. That day, she had spent the night at my grandmother's house. I hated even her scent. It made me angry and want to puke. That time, I had sold our marital home, so I had moved to Grandma's house. I couldn't be in the same room as her for a long time, so I excused myself and went to my room because there was no way I would have survived another minute with Delilah in my presence. One of us had to go, so I decided to be a gentleman enough to leave them and took my son with me. A few hours later, she came to my room saying she wanted to talk and told me how much she regretted leaving her home. Do you think she was sincere? I didn't believe her apology, but for the sake of my peace and my son's peace, I forgave her and told her that I didn't want her back since our time had ended. She then told me that her young boy had dumped her and left her in so many debts that she had to pay. She had also got suspended from work because she would sometimes go to work intoxicated or hungover. I didn't know what she had expected that I would say or do after she had told me all those things. So I resorted to just telling her that the only thing I would help her with was to give her her share of the house, since we had both contributed to purchasing it, so it was the only fair decision I took. Since she had nothing, she thought of coming back to her doormat because even the time I had found her, she was going through the same thing. The only difference was that she had money and she was using young men for comfort, but this time she had fallen for a young boy. And the young boy showed her that he was in it for love, but for benefits. So he benefited, and when he had got enough, he dumped her and left her dry. Well, that is what you get for dating people younger than you, so I didn't feel sorry for her. And I was also not happy about her downgrade. I spoke to my grandmother and told her that I was thinking of applying for joint custody for our child, so that I would get a chance to see if Betty was really willing to mend her relationship with our son and cover the time she had lost when she was all over Ben 10. A few weeks later, she came to my grandmother's house when she was dropping off our son. She started apologizing again and asked us to fix our relationship, telling me that our son deserved to grow up in a home with both his parents. The only polite answer I managed to give her was that the joint custody of our son was the only thing that had joined us. I wanted nothing to do with her. I was doing just fine. Was I wrong to deal with the issue the way I did? Please give me some advice.